Hello and welcome to today's Kerbal Space Program video. Today, we're going to the moon. Or the Mun, I guess. Right now I'm just going to be building the rocket. I'm going to be using the Science Junior Mystery Goo, barometer, seismometer, and thermometer. As well as we're going to be using the medium, or the second biggest fuel tank, and then the smallest fuel tank we have with those landing struts we got from our Midwest mission. We'll be adding 4 pulveronic panels, 4 batteries, and I do clip the fuel tanks in a bit because this craft was way too tall. So we're gonna add another stage with the exact same, but instead we're gonna be using the second smallest fuel tank as then the third stage with the largest fuel tank we have. And under the first one is the swivel engine, and on the other two is the reliant. Connected, we will be using struts on the bottom and the fuel line piece. Make sure you use the fuel line piece because it needs to be fully fueled when those side boosters detach. It's just more efficient that way. I'm also deciding to add the Ren Aerospace flag because, well, why not? So we're kind of just select the crew, make sure that it's Bob Kerman, and yeah, we're just gonna launch TSAS. Go to about 1/3 max thrust, just to ensure that we accelerate at a sensible speed, and then you start your gravity turn, go down to about half thrust, because we don't want to be accelerating and breaking the sound barrier. Once you detach the side boosters, then go max thrust. I went to the map screen so you can see it a bit easier, but I don't need to since I have Kerbal Engineer Reduct. Those readouts up top, they're extremely useful for, well, pretty much anything that you might be doing in Kerbal Space Program. So I'm just making sure that nothing exploded there. So we're going to be pointing prograde marker, and hoping to get to around above 70,000 meters. Really, once you're above that point, cut thrust whenever you feel you have enough distance. Then make our maneuver node to make a circular orbit. In this mission, I was actually able to get quite circular orbits, which was very lucky. I'm going to time warp up after quick saving, and then we're going to burn our maneuver node. Remember, what you need to do is your maneuver nodes. If you're doing a one mission, you've probably already done Minmus. If you haven't done Minmus, I'd recommend you do Minmus because it is a lot easier and a lot more forgiving. And we actually got a Mun encounter right off the bat, which was very lucky. So I'm just tweaking my maneuver node. You want to aim for about 30,000 meters. Since there is no atmosphere, you just need to be high enough so that you don't hit any rocks or the arches, which sadly we don't land near. So we're going to time warp to our maneuver node, quick saving along the way, and start our burn right about now. Remember, this rocket has more than enough fuel. Now this particular fuel tank, it will still be in orbit with Kerbin since I didn't deorbit it. I didn't have enough fuel to actually. So that sucks. I'll just have to use the. I could make like an SST or something to get it, or I could just use the terminate flight button in the tracking center. So now that we've actually entered the Mun's SOI, we can do some science to get science high above the Mun. As you can see, I actually switched the future suit because I just think the future suit looks the best. Personal preference, you don't have to like it. I do. I personally think it's the best looking suit, especially with those ring lights. Kind of hit the rocket a bit, so we're going to create a maneuver node to get into a nice circular orbit with the Mun. So, where's Minmus? It's much harder to get an encounter and much easier to get off of. The Mun's actually, well, so you need a lot more delta V to get to the Mun, and it's a lot less forgiving with its gravity, but it is a lot easier to get to. It just requires a lot more high burns. Now that we're close to the Mun, we can do some science near to the Mun. As you can see, I'm actually transmitting the ones that will give me the same amount of science if I keep them and transmit them, which are usually the crew reports and EVA reports, just because it saves space in the command pod for more science. That way we don't have to worry about that dump experiments button, which is very bad because it means you don't get as much science. So if you're ever worried that you don't have enough room for your science, just add a science container. As you can see, I'm making a quick save before Mun landing, just in case. And I actually do believe my first one here does not work. So we're actually going to need to attempt this again because I was not going much slow enough. So this is what your Mun landing will look like if you're not going slow enough, which you need to be going at about 5 meters per second. Well, preferably 1, but don't be below 5 meters per second. And as you can see, I came in way too fast and hit a slope. So quick load, and then we'll point retrograde and burn. Slow down all of our orbital speed. I'm trying to get below 50 meters per second every time I jump out of time warp until we get close to the ground at I think about 1,000, so that I can just burn off all of my speed. As you can see, I'm going very slow at this point, and I'm trying to conserve my delta V, but you do not need as much delta V to get back from the Mun as Minmus. And we've landed in actually a very good spot to land. So we're going to be taking all of our science, and we're going to jump down, and we're going to do the most important part, and, sorry, I just blinked my mic, plant the mission flag, right there. I'm going to name it the Mun Highlands, because that's where we are. Get a nice screenshot opportunity there. If I can make that the thumbnail, I definitely will be. So I'm just gathering the data from all those experiments just to make sure. We're not actually going to be running them again because we have science from space high above Kerbin, but we are just going to get into... I was trying to figure out, it's because I actually dragged on the radial out node, and burn. So we have a nice circular orbit, which it sadly is not as equatorial as it needs to be. We're going to get our periapsis at about 35k. That's a good place to go for because at that point you'll slow down enough where you won't actually be able to exit Kerbin's atmosphere. Your apoapsis will be inside of the atmosphere, and that way you don't, and then you also don't burn off too much ablator. It's around 50 units of ablator. As you can see, I'm burning, and I'm just slowing down my burn. And we're just going to time warp, and then quick save. Because I found out that you cannot, keep forgetting, but you cannot time warp, or physical time warp, 10,000, or times 10. Because I have better time warp installed. So I ditched that. So we're just re-entering Kerbin's atmosphere, and as you can see, we are going to jettison the heat shield, but that didn't work as planned. So I actually hit the time warp button, and yeah, it's not good. So we're just going to have to do that whole thing again. That's alright. So deploy it right near so we can see some fireworks. And there's a little bug here where there's a temperature gauge on the command pod, even though I had a heat shield. And this was quite worrying. And then I just physical time warped and went away. So we're gonna jettison the heat shield, and I'm just making sure that nothing went awry. We're not gonna go anything. I'm just gonna make sure I got all of my experiments. and recover vessel. In our science points, we're gonna go by the advanced node, advanced electronics node, and then we're gonna buy heavier rocketry, aerodynamics, and then the nuclear node. The nuclear